listen to me. I need you to hear me right now. Life's gonna hit you with storms, pain, loss, confusion. And you're gonna ask, why me? But I came to tell you, it's not about the situation. It's about your spirit in the situation. You see, happiness isn't about everything going right. It's about you being right inside, with God walking beside you through every trial. Some of you only praise when the sun's out, but when the rain falls, your faith fades. You can't live like that. You gotta understand, God didn't promise a life without problems. He promised peace in the middle of them. When you trust his process, when you believe that he's working through your struggle, not against you, that's when you find real happiness. So today, I'm not talking about fake smiles or pretending everything's okay. I'm talking about unshakable joy, the kind that comes when you say, God, I don't understand this storm, but I trust you in it. Because the happiest people aren't the ones with the easiest lives. They're the ones who walk with God no matter what life throws at them. This is your time to rise above your circumstances, to shift from frustration to faith, from worry to worship, and to understand that with God's help, you can be happy in every situation. True happiness comes from trusting God's plan, not controlling every outcome. You see, most people are exhausted, not because life is too hard, but because they are trying to control everything that was never meant to be in their hands. They are fighting battles that belong to God, trying to solve puzzles that only he has the full picture of. We want to know why things happen, when they'll change, how long the pain will last. But faith doesn't work like that. Faith is trusting that God has already written your story, and that every line, every chapter, even the painful ones, serve a purpose far greater than what you can see right now. When you trust God's plan, you stop needing to know all the answers. You stop panicking when doors close because you understand that rejection is often God's protection. You stop chasing people who left because you realize God removed them for a reason. You stop questioning the delay because you know delay is not denial. The truth is, we suffer more in imagination than in reality because we build our peace on the illusion of control. Control is heavy, but trust is light. Control drains you, but trust restores you. Control comes from fear, but trust comes from faith. And when you begin to live from a place of faith, you stop seeing obstacles as threats and start seeing them as training. You stop asking, why me? And start saying, use me. The problem is, we've been taught that happiness means everything going our way. But in God's kingdom, happiness comes when everything goes his way. You'll never be at peace trying to play God in your own life. You'll never be fulfilled trying to force outcomes that only make sense to him. True happiness doesn't come from making life perfect. It comes from knowing the one who is perfect. When you realize that God is working even when you can't see it, your heart begins to rest. You begin to find joy in the process instead of waiting for the result. You start to breathe again because now you're walking with the one who controls everything instead of trying to control everything yourself. When you learn to trust God's plan, every disappointment becomes divine direction. Every delay becomes a setup for something greater. Every heartbreak becomes a doorway to deeper strength. And it's not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you begin to see life differently. Trust transforms your vision. It allows you to see blessings in places others see burdens. It helps you understand that peace doesn't come when problems disappear. Peace comes when you remember who's in control. The deeper your trust, the lighter your soul feels. You stop rushing, you stop comparing, and you stop doubting because you know that everything that is meant for you will never miss you. God's plan is not random. The pain you went through wasn't wasted. The detour wasn't a mistake. You see, God knows where you're going, even when you don't. He knows what you need, Even when you think you need something else, sometimes he holds you back because he's preparing what's ahead. Sometimes he breaks your heart because he's about to rebuild it stronger. Sometimes he takes you through the valley because he knows that's where you'll find his voice. The only reason many people never find peace is because they keep fighting what God is trying to use to grow them. They keep resisting the process that's meant to refine them. When you stop trying to control every outcome, you make space for God to move. The tighter you hold on, the less room he has to work. But the moment you surrender, he begins to work miracles you could never make happen by yourself. Trusting God doesn't mean you stop working. It means you stop worrying. It means you do your best and let him handle the rest. It means you walk by faith, not by sight, because sometimes faith will ask you to step even when the path isn't visible. You may not see the next step, but he already designed the entire staircase. True happiness is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of peace. And peace is born out of trust. Think about it. When you trust a pilot, you don't question every turn the plane takes. When you trust a doctor, you follow their prescription without knowing all the details. But when it comes to God, we question every move. We say we trust him, but we panic the moment life doesn't go as planned. Real faith isn't tested when everything's good. It's tested when you can't see the outcome, but still believe it's going to work for your good. You have to stop trying to figure it all out and start believing that the one who created the universe can handle your life too. Trust is an act of surrender. It's saying, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I know who you are. It's believing that his wisdom is higher than your understanding. It's resting in the fact that your timeline is not the only timeline. God doesn't work according to your schedule. He works according to his purpose. And when you align your expectations with his timing, life starts to feel lighter. You stop carrying the weight of tomorrow because you realize God's already there. When you live in trust, you stop needing to see evidence before you believe. You stop needing validation before you move. You start walking with confidence, not because you have it all figured out, but because you know the one who does. People may call you crazy for believing when nothing makes sense, but that's what faith looks like. Abraham didn't know where he was going, but he trusted. Joseph didn't understand the betrayal, but he trusted. Daniel didn't see a way out of the lion's den, but he trusted. Every miracle in the Bible began with trust. And that same God who delivered them is still writing your story. When you stop controlling, you start receiving. You start hearing God more clearly because your fear isn't louder than his voice anymore. You start to notice blessings that were always there, but hidden behind your anxiety. You begin to live with purpose because now you're not reacting to life. You're walking with the one who leads life. That's the beauty of trust. It removes confusion and replaces it with clarity, not because you know the plan, but because you know the planner. Every time you feel frustrated about where you are, remind yourself God sees the full picture. You only see a small piece. If you could see what he sees, you'd thank him for the very things you're crying about. You'd realize that some doors didn't open because they weren't meant to protect you. They were meant to protect your destiny. You'd understand that some people left because they weren't designed to go where God is taking you. You'd see that every detour is divine redirection. We live in a world that worships control over careers, relationships, success, image. But the more you try to control, the more peace slips away. The happiest people aren't those who control everything. They're those who trust God with everything. They understand that happiness isn't found in having everything go right. It's found in knowing that even when it goes wrong, God is still right there, working it for good. That kind of happiness can't be shaken by circumstances. It's not built on outcomes. It's built on faith. When you live in that kind of trust, you wake up differently. You move differently. You stop chasing happiness in temporary things because your joy comes from something eternal. You stop overthinking because you know the author of your life doesn't make mistakes. You stop fearing the future because you know who holds it. And even when things don't go the way you wanted, you can still smile because you know everything is unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to. The truth is, control is an illusion. You can plan, you can prepare, but ultimately, life will still surprise you. People will change, seasons will shift, storms will come, but God never changes. He's the constant when everything else moves. So, if your peace is rooted in control, you'll always be restless. But if it's rooted in trust, you'll always have peace. That's why true happiness is not about having power. It's about having peace. And peace only comes when you finally let go and let God. When you truly trust God, fear loses its grip. You start to understand that nothing can touch you unless He allows it. And if He allows it, it must be for your good. You start living from a place of calm, even in chaos. You stop trying to fix everything because you realize you're not the fixer. You're the follower. You're not the author. You're the vessel. That's freedom. That's where real happiness begins. Because happiness is not something you chase. It's something you become when you trust that God is in control. When you put your trust in Him, you stop living in reaction to your circumstances and start living in response to His presence. You start to recognize that every challenge is an invitation to grow closer to Him. Every setback is a setup for something greater. Every unanswered prayer is a redirection to something better. Trust turns confusion into clarity, chaos into calm, and fear into faith. It shifts your energy from striving to surrendering, from controlling to connecting. And the more you connect with God, the less you need to control the world around you. So stop trying to figure it all out. Stop trying to force what's not meant for you. Stop letting anxiety steal your peace. God already has a plan, not a random plan, but one designed perfectly for your growth, your purpose, your joy. When you begin to trust that plan, happiness flows naturally. It doesn't depend on what happens. It depends on who you believe is in control. That's why real happiness can only be found in surrender, not in knowing everything, but in trusting the one who does. Gratitude in every situation unlocks peace that problems can't take away. Most people wake up each morning thinking about what's missing instead of what's present. They focus on what they've lost instead of what they still have. They look at the mountain in front of them and forget the strength that brought them this far. Gratitude is not a reaction to good times. It's a lifestyle of faith that says, even in this, I choose to see God's goodness. Because when you train your mind to see blessings in every circumstance, you stop being a victim of situations and become a vessel of strength. Gratitude shifts the atmosphere inside you. It doesn't change what's happening around you immediately, but it changes how you experience it. It brings peace in chaos, light in darkness, and joy in pain. Most people think gratitude is something that happens after they receive something, but true gratitude begins before the blessing arrives. It's saying thank you even when you don't yet see the result, because you trust that God is already working behind the scenes. That's where the power lies, not in getting what you want, but in acknowledging what you already have. Gratitude rewires your spirit. It takes you out of a place of lack and into a place of abundance. It teaches your heart to stop complaining and start celebrating. When you thank God for what you have, He multiplies it. When you complain about what you lack, you shrink it, because the energy you live in determines what you attract. Every time you choose gratitude over grumbling, You're telling your soul that God is bigger than the problem. You're declaring that his goodness outweighs your challenges. You're affirming that peace is not something you wait for. It's something you create through perspective. You see, gratitude doesn't deny pain. It just refuses to let pain steal your peace. You can hurt and still be thankful. You can be confused and still be content. Gratitude doesn't mean you don't want more. It means you're thankful for what you already have while trusting that what's meant for you will come in time. It's a mature kind of happiness that doesn't need everything to be perfect in order to smile. When you live in gratitude, you begin to see how blessed you already are. You start noticing the breath in your lungs, the roof over your head, the people who still love you, the moments that money can't buy. You stop taking the small things for granted, the sunrise, the laughter, the quiet moments of grace. Gratitude opens your eyes to God's fingerprints all over your life. It's the ability to say, God, I may not have everything I want, but I thank you for everything I need. That's the kind of heart that finds peace in every season. Peace doesn't come from everything being easy. Peace comes from recognizing that even in the hardest moments, you are still surrounded by grace. Gratitude teaches you to look past what's missing and focus on what's working. Maybe things didn't go your way. Maybe someone disappointed you. Maybe your plans fell apart. But even then, there's always something to thank God for. The fact that you're still here means you still have purpose. The fact that you can feel means your heart is still alive. The fact that you can pray means God is still listening. Gratitude shifts your focus from the storm to the Savior, from the pain to the lesson, from the waiting to the growing. Every challenge carries a hidden blessing, but you can't see it through the lens of frustration. You have to see it through the lens of faith. Gratitude opens that lens. It allows you to interpret life differently. You begin to realize that some problems are actually preparation, that some losses are lessons, and that some delays are divine protection. The moment you stop saying, why me? And start saying, thank you for trusting me with this, your whole perspective changes. Gratitude doesn't always make sense, but it always makes peace. It allows you to feel contentment even when the world expects you to complain. There are people with less who smile more, and there are people with more who live in misery. The difference is not what they have, it's how they see. Gratitude is a mindset, not a material possession. You could have everything and still feel empty, or you could have little and feel full. Gratitude fills the gap between where you are and where you wish to be. It bridges the space between your current reality and divine peace. It says, even though I'm not where I want to be, I'm thankful that I'm not where I used to be. That mindset releases peace in a way that problems can't take away. When you live in gratitude, even struggles start to look like blessings in disguise. The moments you once resented become the moments you thank God for because they made you stronger, wiser, and closer to Him. Gratitude turns pain into power. It turns wounds into wisdom. It turns delays into divine timing. Every time you thank God in the middle of chaos, you declare that your faith is bigger than your fear. You take away the enemy's ability to control your mood because your joy is no longer tied to what's happening around you. You cannot be grateful and angry at the same time. You cannot be grateful and fearful at the same time. Gratitude disarms negativity. It changes your spiritual frequency. The more you thank, the less you complain. The more you count your blessings, the fewer your burdens feel. When you wake up in the morning and start your day with, thank you, God, you're aligning your heart with heaven. You're reminding yourself that no matter what comes today, you already have enough within you to handle it. Gratitude doesn't just shift your mood, it strengthens your mindset. It makes you resilient because now you're not defined by problems. You're defined by perspective. Gratitude is one of the most powerful spiritual weapons you can carry. It silences doubt, defeats worry, and destroys self-pity. It's hard for fear to live in a thankful heart. When you thank God in the storm, you're reminding yourself that He's still in control of the waves. You're choosing to stand in faith even when the ground shakes. That's not denial. That's divine trust. That's you saying, God, I may not see the full picture, but I'm thankful for every piece. Gratitude is the anchor that keeps your soul steady when life tries to pull you apart. When you start practicing gratitude, you'll realize it's not something you do only when life is good. It's something you do especially when life is hard, because that's when you need it most. Gratitude keeps your spirit alive when circumstances try to crush it. It's the light that keeps shining even when darkness surrounds you. And it's a choice. Gratitude is always a choice. You can choose to focus on what's wrong or focus on what's right. You can choose to complain about what you lost or celebrate what remains. You can choose to feed your worry or feed your worship. Whatever you focus on grows, so choose to focus on what God has already done. Gratitude is like oxygen for your soul. Without it, everything feels heavy. With it, everything becomes lighter. Even pain becomes bearable when you find a reason to be thankful through it. Because when you say, thank you, God, even in the middle of heartbreak, heaven hears it louder than your cries. It's the sound of faith. Gratitude is not weakness, it's strength under control. It's your way of saying, this won't break me because I still have something to be thankful for. Gratitude reminds you that you're not empty. You're evolving. You're not stuck. You're being shaped. You're not forgotten. You're being guided. Even in the smallest moments, gratitude brings peace. When you pause and say thank you for your breath, your heart, your sight, your voice, your family, your opportunities, your failures that taught you, your dreams that keep you going, you begin to see that you are rich in ways that money could never measure. Gratitude changes your standard of success. It teaches you that happiness isn't about having more, it's about appreciating more. When you appreciate the little things, the big things come naturally. Because God trusts thankful hearts with greater blessings. Every time you practice gratitude, you draw closer to God. You align your heart with His will. You open spiritual doors because you're walking in humility and awareness. Gratitude says, I see your hand, God, even in this. And when God knows you're thankful, He continues to pour out more, not because you asked, but because He knows you'll recognize it and glorify Him for it. Gratitude attracts grace. It keeps you calm when others panic. It keeps you centered when the world shakes. It gives you clarity because now you're operating from love, not lack. There's a supernatural peace that comes with a grateful heart. It's a peace that doesn't make sense to the human mind. It's the peace the Bible talks about, the peace that surpasses understanding. You can't explain it, you just feel it. You could be surrounded by problems and still feel calm. You could be in uncertainty and still feel secure. Because gratitude teaches you that peace isn't about external control. It's about internal surrender. The more grateful you are, the less anxious you become, because gratitude and anxiety can't live in the same space. Gratitude is also a reminder of how far God has already brought you. Sometimes we forget that what we have today was once something we prayed for. We begged for peace, and now we live in it. We asked for strength, and now we carry it. We cried for healing, and now we walk in it. Gratitude helps you remember those answered prayers. It humbles you. It grounds you. It makes you realize that even when life doesn't give you everything you want, God has already given you more than enough to keep going. If you ever feel lost, start counting your blessings out loud. Start naming them one by one. Your perspective will shift instantly because it's impossible to stay negative when you're focused on thankfulness. Gratitude isn't just an attitude, it's a weapon, a shield, a source of spiritual energy. It protects your heart from bitterness and keeps your spirit free from resentment. When you're thankful, jealousy dies. When you're thankful, comparison fades. Because now your eyes are on what God gave you, not what He gave someone else. Even in moments of uncertainty, gratitude reminds you that God has never failed you. He brought you through things you didn't think you'd survive. He turned situations around that once looked hopeless. And if He did it before, He can do it again. Gratitude gives you faith for tomorrow because it reminds you of yesterday's miracles. It builds confidence that no matter what happens next, you'll be okay because God is still the same. A grateful person walks differently. They radiate peace. They carry a quiet confidence that comes from knowing that God is with them. They smile even when life isn't easy, not because they're pretending, but because they've learned that peace doesn't depend on perfection. Gratitude makes you spiritually strong, emotionally stable, and mentally calm. It's the foundation of happiness that no problem can take away because it's rooted in something deeper than circumstances. It's rooted in faith. When you live in gratitude, you begin to influence others without even speaking. People feel the peace in your presence. They feel the calm that comes from someone who knows how to say thank you even in trouble. Gratitude becomes contagious. It spreads hope, light, and love. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Soon you'll realize that gratitude isn't just something you do. It's who you've become. It's your state of being. It's your way of walking through life no matter what happens around you. Faith turns life's tests into testimonies of inner joy and strength. Every person faces moments where life shakes them, where the plan they built in their mind falls apart, where prayers seem unanswered, and the future